sea was restless and the waves churned like the fury in a woman's heart as Jeanne de Clisson stood at the bow of her warship, her sails billowing in the wind. A French vessel had appeared on the horizon, unaware that it was sailing toward death itself. The men aboard whispered prayers when they recognized the dark silhouette of her fleet. They knew who she was, the lioness of Brittany, the noblewoman turned pirate, the widow seeking vengeance. Jeanne had made a vow, and she would not stop until French blood stained the sea. But how did a noblewoman, once wrapped in the comforts of courtly life, become one of the most feared pirates of her time? Let's find out. She was a noblewoman born in 1300 into a wealthy family within the Vendée region of France. She was Jeanne-Louise de Belleville, the daughter of Maurice IV Montaigu and Lettice de Parthenay. But when her father died at a very young age, she was left under the guardianship of her mother, who ensured Jeanne still lived a life of privilege, as expected of a lady of her status. Jeanne de Clisson married 3 times before her life changed forever. Her first husband was Geoffrey de Chateaubriand. He died in 1326, leaving her with 2 children. She then married Guy de Penthièvre in 1328, but the marriage got annulled due to family opposition. And that was when she married Olivier de Clisson in 1330, a wealthy noble. But fate had other sad plans. Her husband Olivier fought in the Breton War of Succession from 1341 to 1364, a brutal conflict ignited by the death of Duke John III of Brittany, who left no direct heirs. 2 factions emerged after the Duke's death, one supporting John of Montfort, backed by England, and the other supporting Charles of Blois, endorsed by France. Olivier aligned with the French-supported Blois faction. But in war, loyalty can be a dangerous thing. In 1342, during the Siege of Vannes, Olivier was captured by English forces and was later released. But his freedom raised suspicions due to the unusually low ransom demanded, leading some to question his loyalty to the French cause. These doubts culminated in his arrest on charges of treason, but they arrested him in a shady way. Olivier was invited to a tournament on French soil, and it was here that they quickly arrested and took him to Paris to be tried by his peers. But guess what? The king and the lords were in on this plan. Despite a lack of concrete evidence, Olivier was swiftly tried and condemned. Jeanne tried to save her husband but failed. She even attempted to bribe a king's officer, which resulted in her being accused of rebellion and disobedience. Before she could be arrested, Jeanne escaped and went into hiding with the help of her husband's son from his first marriage. In June 1343, she was found guilty in her absence, and 2 months later, her beloved husband was executed by beheading in Paris. To further disgrace his memory, his head was displayed on a pike in Nantes, serving as a stark warning to others. The execution of Olivier de Clisson was a profound shock to Jeanne and other nobility. As if killing her husband and her sentencing wasn't enough, the French crown banished Jeanne and took most of her properties as punishment for her rebellion against King Philip VI. This injustice, coupled with her belief that her husband had been wrongly accused and unjustly executed, made Jeanne vow to seek retribution against the French. But first she must do something. Jeanne took her 2 young sons to Nantes and showed them what the king had done to their father. Then she sold some of the properties that were still in her possession. Not for safety, not for peace, but for war. She used the money she made to raise a force of about 400 loyal men and began her revenge. Her attacks started on land, targeting those loyal to the king and Charles de Blois. She struck French strongholds, raided supply lines, butchered soldiers, until France knew her name. But land was not enough. To truly make France bleed, she needed the sea. So, she turned to the English for help. They did not refuse her. With their backing, Jeanne converted 3 merchant ships to warships, which she painted black with red sails. She named her flagship My Revenge and became a privateer, a legal pirate striking France's ships. Her fleet became known as the Black Fleet. She targeted French merchant vessels, aiming to cripple France's economic interests. Her tactics were ruthless. She would often slaughter entire crews, leaving 1 or 2 survivors to spread the tale of her vengeance. This strategy instilled fear among French sailors and served as a psychological weapon against the French crown. It also earned her the name Lioness of Brittany. For a decade, Jeanne haunted the English Channel, a body of water that separates southern England from northern France. The French called her a demon, a menace, a traitor, but she called it justice, and her message was clear. The French crown took her husband. She would take everything from them, and she did make a significant impact. Her actions disrupted French maritime activities and diverted resources during a tumultuous period in French history. But one day the French attacked Jeanne's fleet and sank her flagship. She and her 2 sons drifted at sea for 5 days. Sadly, her son Guillaume did not survive, but Jeanne and her remaining son, Olivier, were rescued by Montfort's supporters. She continued her attacks in the English Channel for another 13 years, but even the fiercest warriors must rest. As the years passed, the war changed. Jeanne's thirst for revenge had been quenched. She left the sea, got married for the final time to an English knight named Sir Walter Bentley, and lived out her final years in peace. Her husband, Walter Bentley, passed away in December 1359, and Jeanne died a few weeks later. But her tales of her greatness never faded away, a name that would never be forgotten. If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe, and hit the bell button for more incredible tales from history. Thank you for watching.